half on this screen. I don't know if he's having technical difficulties or what his problem is. And let me clean this screen for you guys. Can you get me a cloth, darling?
Sure.
So I'm assuming we'll see Ryan shortly. He's working on it. But today we're going to talk about the issues that loggers and firewood operations around the country are having right now. Because I know it's not just in my location or his, it's kind of everywhere. So we're going to be talking about that stuff. Let me clean your screen off real quick here.
You put carpet tile right on Mac's bed.
There, that's better. So appreciate you guys stopping by. And like I said, Ryan's going to be here in just a minute. So when he gets here, we'll see if we can figure out what's going on. But I know for me in my area right now, we had a sawmill explosion last week in Searsmont. There's at least one volunteer firefighter that has passed. There are multiple people in burn units in Massachusetts. Really big hit to the forestry industry. The Robbins family has already responded and said that they will rebuild the mill, that mills are rebuildable. So looks like even though it may just be a short-term thing, that they will rebuild. So that'll help for sure. So we'll see how that goes. We've got Rob V here checking in from Michigan. He says he can smell the two-cycle oil, and got Billy Bob's wood. So appreciate you guys stopping by. Like I said, Ryan is supposed to be here. Oh, where'd he go? Day late, dollar short, overalls and all. There he is. So
Yep,
I figured there was technical difficulties or something on your end.
there was. It wasn't wanting to load.
You or the YouTube feed?
Both.
So
No.
I see Craig the Kilted Sawyer's checking in. We got Karsten McGee. I put the post out for this to a whole bunch of different areas, so we should see some new people hopefully popping in. We got Beckwith Sawmill Life, so that's Jack Beckwith with
Wood miser.
excuse me, with Wood Miser. Bradshaw Firewood, he's checking in. Dallas is here with us, and there's K Train, Kevin Violet. So some of the usual suspects in the room, but I told them already today we're talking about some of the struggles that you are having as a logger and I'm having as a firewood business and some of the other businesses in the area as well. Biggest thing right now is fuel prices. Fuel prices are through the roof. I know just for me and my little tiny firewood business, I'm spending in excess of $200 a day in fuel just to make a couple of deliveries and run some splitters and saws. So that used to be $50 or so.
Well, you know what they say: the 100's the new 20.
If it goes that far. I filled up
Yeah.
this morning, and I already know my first stop tomorrow is the fuel station because I'm under a quarter of a tank again. I think when the price goes up, the gas doesn't last as long. I think they do something different to it.
Well, considering I used to haul fuel for about a year and a half when I dislocated my ankle logging, cutting timber, I had to crawl on a tractor trailer for about a year and a half for it to heal up because the idiot doctor told me, "Oh, you just sprained it." So I worked for 6 weeks with a 50%. Turned out it was a 50% dislocation, and it took a year and a half for that to heal up. But anyway, actually longer than that to completely heal. But so during the summer, they can add. Oh, help me out. What's that gas in a Bic lighter, in a cigarette lighter? Starts
Methanol?
with a B.
Oh,
No, I can't
butane.
say it.
Butane.
Butane. So they add butane in during the this time of year. 6 months out of the year, they can add butane to it, and
Oh, you got my dog
yeah,
barking
there we
now.
go. Sorry, y'all.
You started talking
They
about
add
starting a fire, and the alarm went off.
they add butane to the fuel, and so that cuts your fuel mileage. I think it's this time of year that they add it. I can't remember. It's this time of year in the wintertime. I think it's this time of year.
Well, I know normally I get about 11 pulling the dump trailer. I'm only getting about 9.5 now, so it must be this time of year.
Yeah.
But fuel is one of the issues, but that issue goes to you guys as loggers as well. I know a lot of the mechanical crews up here, we've got a few of them that are actually for sale. With the fuel prices the way that they are and not having a timber market, these guys aren't looking to put those machines back into the woods. So that doesn't bode well for somebody like me who needs to have firewood or pulp. And with the sawmill fire that we had last week, that's putting a hurt on the industry up where we are. So I think it's going to be a very expensive and strange summer up here in Maine. I've not seen it like this since I've been doing it.
Well, you you look. I tell you one other thing for the diesel fuel for this time of year, and not every place does it. Okay, but they're allowed to add up to 20% biodiesel to the blend without labeling it at the pump. All right. Now they generally only do that during the summertime here because the biodiesel clouds up at a higher temperature than regular diesel fuel. Okay. Um, but that biodiesel, you don't get quite the mileage out of it usually that you do with regular diesel. The other problem with that biodiesel is it's hydroscopic, so it'll attract some moisture and it grows algae really bad.
And it
So,
also cleans out all the deposits in your fuel system from running regular fuel too. Biodiesel is
well,
more of a solvent.
yeah, well, there are some benefits to it. That's true. And so if you're aware that it's in there, it does add lubricity. So one upside is those of us that are old enough to remember regular diesel before the days of low sulfur and now ultra low sulfur, the bio does add lubricity back to the fuel. So there are some benefits to it. If it's in there, I don't have an issue with it because don't get me wrong, I'm not going to pay a premium for it or anything like that, but I'm not going to sit there and lose sleep worrying about it. I run a good fuel treatment and that also kills that algae, so I don't have to worry about the algae growth. But I run that year round. And incidentally, you can get algae growth in your diesel fuel year round.
Rob V is asking if it's time for axes and horses. We're not going that extreme yet. We can wait a little bit for that, but there may come a time when you see a lot of these bigger mechanical crews and some of these larger sawmills really struggle to get what they need. And I think that one of the answers to help that would be to go back to smaller mills and smaller operations and keep things
Yes.
more local.
Well, when you scale that up like that, you bring in a whole nother set of you take okay, so you take Virginia and most of the East Coast, most of the United States, really, but I'm going to specifically focus on Virginia since that's where I live. You look, the tracts of timber, property, period, forget timber. The pieces of private property becoming smaller and smaller and more fragmented. And it's harder to move. You can't move one of those big crews. Most of the time they don't like to move for 20 acres. Not where
Yeah.
we're at. If they're close, if they're right next door, sure, they'll do it usually. But if they've got to move 20 or 30 miles, if you don't have at least a 50-acre boundary, you're probably not going to get them to cut it. And it's because of all the overhead costs of just moving.
Yeah, and I also saw something else the other day that said we are in the midst of the largest transfer of land ever that the country has seen due to people aging out that own
Yep.
large parcels and they're being
Yep.
transferred to heirs, trusts, wherever that land was left. This is one of the over the next 25 years, it's going to be the largest single land transfer that we've ever had in the country. So when you think
Yep.
about all that stuff that's changing hands, what's that going to do to the industry? Are we going to be allowed on that land still? Are these people going to let us on that land still to be able to harvest timber and resources?
Well, and that's exactly correct. And it's not just timber. I mean, you look, people are getting more and more picky about what type of farming practices they're letting on their land if they're going to lease it. Uh,
Yep.
your your average farmer, your average cattle farmer is 65 years old and climbing, and your average forest land owner is 75 years old. The younger generations, right, wrong, or indifferent, it doesn't matter what what our personal beliefs are on environmentalism or any of that. At the end of the day, on this, as business owners, if the perception is that the big iron is bad and the small iron is good or whatever, and I'll point blank tell you, and I've said it before on this podcast. If you sit there and take a bad operator and put him on the equipment I'm running, he's going to do more damage than a good operator on a big machine. It's just how it is. The operator's the number one component to it. If you don't have a good operator, you're not dealing with much. But at the end of the day, it's the perception. I get more and more phone calls specifically because of the type of equipment that I'm running. It has nothing to do with the brand of equipment I'm running. It's the style.
Yep, yep. And I see Jack's here. So Jack works with Woodmiser. If you're here and can answer in the chat, Jack, what is your most popular sawmill that you're selling? And what are these people using it for? Are they trying to start small sawmill businesses, or are they using it more as a hobby mill? I know there's a lot of mills out there right now that are in the $7,000 to $15,000 range to get into an entry level hobby mill, and you see them pop up on marketplace all the time because somebody bought one thinking they were going to use it a bunch and they never use it and it gets sold. So it's just one of those deals where, again, like I said earlier, if we could get back to the local mills where you supported a county or a side of a county, depending on how big your area is, and you could sell that wood locally rather than paying transportation to get it halfway across the country to a Lowe's or a Home Depot. Think about how much better off we would be if, one, you could sell your timber locally, and two, you could actually get the finished product and use it locally too and keep it right where it belongs.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Russ. So, you and I have talked about it. Jeremy and I have talked about it. Dallas and I have talked about it. Dallas and I were on the phone talking about it today. And Dallas informed me today that there's a new sawmill that the Amish are starting up on just across the county line on the east side of the county, out past Dallas's operation. Um, they're using and Jack will be excited about this. They're using a Woodmiser LT70. Now, ironically, it's three-phase electric plugged in because it's Amish. It's three-phase electric plugged into a diesel genset.
Okay.
But yep, I'm kind of scratching my head on that one. Why not just go ahead and get a diesel out the gate? But whatever. I'm sure the gentleman, he had a valid reason for doing what he's done. But anyway, I'm excited because at least it's another market for us. His primary thing, it looks like, from what I'm understanding, and Dallas, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but is he's looking to cut bridge mats, which is great because we need a market for low grade.
Yeah, we used to get a lot of the bridge mat material for firewood, and I actually like it for firewood because it's bigger diameter, so I'm not dealing with
Yeah,
small poles all the time. Only
yeah.
problem is with the bridge mats, it's usually pretty crummy logs. There's a lot of knots and whatnot in it. There's usually not a lot of sweep because you got to get a straight tie out of it and all that. So it's not bad, but it's not the best stuff. But the price was usually right. So these guys have to saw these things when they're fairly green because of what they're sawing for timber. So if it sits too long, they don't want to mess with it because it slows the saw down too much. So they just sell it to somebody like me. And I enjoyed that, but I don't get very much of it anymore. Rob says, what equipment would you all recommend for a guy starting out in the firewood or sawmill business? So, the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need a quality chainsaw. Which brand that
Yep.
is, that's totally up to you, but get a good quality commercial chainsaw, not a homeowner saw from Home Depot or Lowe's. Go to your local dealer or sawsuppliers.com, somewhere like that. Get yourself a good quality chainsaw. And then after that, you got to ask yourself a bunch of questions. First one's going to be, how much do you really want to do? What kind of wood do you have? And how much and how fast are you looking to produce it? There's really not a bad machine out there. And with the sawmill stuff, I've not done enough sawmilling myself to really push you in the right direction. I just know that for me, one of the things I look for is a fully welded bed on a sawmill. I don't like a bolt together mill. I just feel like they're
Yeah.
going to loosen up over time and they're not going to stay true. I know Ryan's done some sawmilling too. I can let him add into his stuff, but that's my thing. You want a good quality welded bed, a good commercial chainsaw, and you really can't go bad with any of the commercial splitters out there. It really doesn't matter which manufacturer you pick from.
Well, dealer support with if you're dealing with anything mechanical, dealer support is number one over brand in most instances. Not all, but most. Uh, Russ and I had that 462 of mine that I'm in love with. I had some issues on that. I'm not going to name the dealer's name because I just don't believe in calling them out like that. But it was a dealer I tried in an adjoining county that I also do a lot of work in. I figured I'd send them some business and whatnot. If you see me back in their store, it will
Times are tough.
be, yeah, it's because I'm desperate and need a part. And I carry, you can ask Russ, I carry a lot of saw parts and stuff on my truck. Uh, the service was horrible. But anyway, and that's not a reflection on Still, that was that local dealer. Um, but as far as equipment, so 20 years ago, I was doing a pretty fair amount of sawmilling. I had a Woodmiser LT40 Super Hydraulic. Um, I was cutting some ties. I was cutting um, hardwood flooring lumber, like One Common and stuff. I'd pull the FAS out and send that to another buyer. But I had a large hardwood flooring mill about 8 miles from 8 or 9 miles from my house. And so all of the, I cut whatever I could into flooring and then boxed out the heart and either made a tie out of that, depending on the market, or pallet cants. Um, and, you know, as far as sawmilling, the number one thing is, and this is whether you're buying your chainsaw, whether you're buying your sawmill, you need to know what your market is. Like here on the East Coast, like where Russ is at, in truthfulness, you could getting started out a 261 still. You know,
Yep.
that would cut that you'd be amazed what you can cut with those. Those are
That with a
really good
20-inch
lightweight
bar will
saws.
cut 90% of the trees that are in the woods up here.
Yeah, I run a 16-inch bar on that, and you that's going to cut most anything you really want to cut for firewood anyway. Some guys are going to laugh at me and pick at me and say whatnot, but now if you're getting a lot of big oversized tree service wood, then you need a bigger saw.
Yep.
But my point being is match it to what you're going to do 90% of your work with. Don't buy your saw for 10% of your work. Don't buy your sawmill for 10% of your work. Not when you're starting out. You take a company like Woodmiser, speaking from personal experience with them, their customer service is second to none. As far as I'm concerned, when shopping a mill, and I have no skin in that game whatsoever. I don't own any mill right now, but if I were looking at another, Woodmiser would be my first pick to look at again because their customer service was awesome. I had a couple of instances where it turned out to be a rodent got in there and chewed some freaking wiring, but they put me on the phone with a factory tech for probably 2 or 3 hours without costing me a dime and walked me through troubleshooting till we finally found where the problem was at.
Yep.
But
That means a lot.
that's huge. That's everything. Anybody, any idiot can sell somebody something once, but if you want that customer back again for a repeat sale, and this is kind of what I was tying into with that dealer, it's how you treat them after the sale. That's what's going to make things up going forward.
Yep.
And your equipment, you don't want to go too small, but you don't want to shoot under it, but you want to get something, you want to size it right. And that's where, again, having a good dealer comes into play that'll hopefully, and a good salesman that will take the time to ask you the questions of and walk you through and put you in the right piece of equipment for you. You don't want something that you're going to grow out of in 6 to 12 months. You want to buy it right the first time to where you've got a couple of years in it. Okay. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I always tell people to buy the biggest piece that they can comfortably afford, because what that does is it gives you room to grow into it and you're not undersizing yourself and limiting what you can do. So a little bit bigger is usually a good thing. Now, I'll make an exception to that. If you've not run a chainsaw before, that doesn't mean because you can
Yeah.
afford a 395 you go buy a 395.
Yeah, it's going to
But what I'm
fatigue
saying
you
is with
quick.
like a log splitter, a little bit bigger is never going to hurt anything with a log splitter. There's really not a thing is too big. So the more power and the more split force you can have, the better off you're going to be. Same thing with a sawmill. It's a wider board that you can cut with a bigger mill, so you get more money for the wider lumber. It's just those things. And Rob had another great question too. He's full of it. He's great. He
Yeah, that's
says,
an excellent
not a
question.
brand or anything like that, but what was one piece of equipment that you thought you really needed and you bought it and it ended up being a waste of money? I know what mine is. Oh, you want me to go first? Okay.
Yeah, go for it. Lay it on us.
So, my waste of equipment, I bought a bagging station for firewood, thinking that it was going to make things faster. It makes it easier, but it doesn't make it faster. My firewood bagger that I love the most out of anything is a 5-gallon pail with the bottom cut out of it. Cost $2. The bagging station was like $600. Does it work? Yes. Is it nice? Sure. But the bucket does the same thing. And I got to be honest, I'm stubborn and I'm used to what I used to do. Even though I have the bagger, a lot of times I grab my bucket and I use the bucket. That's just me. I mean, that was $600 that I didn't need to spend. I already had the bucket and it worked. I just thought, hey man, they got a bagger. That's going to be really nice. If I get that, it's going to speed me up. It's no faster.
I guess for me, I'm trying to really think about that. A piece of equipment. My problem, I think Russell will tell you this, that I tend to do a lot of research before I buy something and really, really analyze and try to talk to other people that are doing something similar before I drop the hammer on pretty much anything.
He likes his
Uh,
numbers and statistics and specs,
I
and
do.
I've heard more about skitters in the last, I don't know, 3 months than I have in the last 20 years, and we still don't have a skitter yet. So I mean, it's just he's absolutely right.
Well, and the I used to own skitters and whatnot, so I'm extremely familiar with them. But for the majority of my landowners don't really want a skidder on there. But as Russ can attest to seeing the terrain and some of the stuff I work on, some of them a skidder does make more sense. But I'm
It
trying to
would be
figure out.
handy.
I've got a host of skidders that would work for what I want to do, but they're all out of like the early '90s to the mid '70s.
This reminds me of a fairy tale book that I saw one time called The Princess and the Pea. It might be the logger and the skitter instead.
Well, my here's my hang up is I don't want to buy something that I can't get parts for anymore.
Yeah,
And
that's just it.
they do not make a new small skidder. So doesn't matter whether whether I was willing to purchase a new one or not, it's not even an option.
And that's
So
why,
I've got
unfortunately, you see so many of the jacks kicking around still, because you can
yep.
go to Napa and get whatever you need for parts right at Napa.
And I've never owned a jack. I've run one time. And but that's a very as you know, that's a very strong contender for me is something in the 230D to 240A class. I really like the 230, but that's neither here nor there. But um, I like to do a lot of research on something before I buy it.
I would recommend an A model. They're much quieter.
Well, not if you still get one with a Detroit.
Well, try to get it without the Detroit. Your ears will thank you.
Now, wait a minute there. What were you telling me on the phone just about an hour or two ago that
Yeah, but I don't
Detroit
have your
turned?
kind of money. I'm just a
No,
firewood guy.
oh, looky there. What was that statement you made that, how did you phrase that? Detroit's turned diesel into noise and noise into money, I believe was your
Yep,
statement.
yep, it's true. And you'll never have to wonder where the guy is with the skitter because you'll hear him the whole way in.
Oh, that's true. That's so true. You can tell when they're winding up. My first skidder was 1967 Franklin 130B with a 353 in it.
Yep.
You can tell everything they're doing.
I had a landowner one time. We had a timberjack skidder in the back, and he was pulling a twitch out. And I mean, sounded like he was going 100 miles an hour. She looked at me just as serious, an older lady. She goes, "Boy, it sounds like he's driving awfully fast." She goes, "Do you think he should slow down?" I said, "Well, we'll find out when he gets here." About 6 minutes later, he comes crawling in at 2 miles an hour with that thing right on the carpet and a big old drag of hardwood behind him. She goes, "Oh my." She goes, "Is there something wrong with that?" She goes, "That's not going very fast." I said, "He's cruising." I said, "He's doing good." I said, "That's a good pull right there." She goes, "Wow." She goes, "That's noisy." I said, "Yep." I said, "It is." But
You, you, you know, you can easily, so Rob, to go to kind of circle back to your question, you can easily add too much equipment to any operation and become equipment heavy. I tend to run, I think Russ will agree with me, and those that live around me and know me, I think will tend to agree that I tend to run on the lighter end of the equipment spectrum. And I have to keep myself, and my wife keeps me throttled back a lot because I like equipment. I can easily pile up a bunch of equipment, but I don't want to be working to pay for equipment. I want to be working to pay for the necessities of life and be able to enjoy my free time.
yep,
If and I've been down that road of having lots and lots of equipment. It's more I've got to pay for. It's more I've got to maintain. When you're purchasing anything, you need to be asking yourself, how much of my life am I willing to trade for this item? Because that's exactly what you're doing, is literally physically trading part of your life for that item. The older I get, the more I'm like, nope, not interested.
yeah, and that's just it. I mean, Ryan and I have talked about it a lot. We're both trying to kind of get things sorted out so that we can work when we want to, not work because we have to. And that's just it's a mindset type of thing. You can get caught up in keeping up with the Joneses real quick. You know, this guy got a new truck, I want a new truck. That guy got a new splitter, I want a new splitter. That guy got a new sawmill, I want a new sawmill. All you're doing is just trading, like Ryan said, you're trading your time and your life for payments. You don't own it. So all you're doing is paying on somebody else's machine. Should something happen and God forbid you get hurt, those machines go away. The bank doesn't care that you didn't get hurt. They want you to pay your payment. We've
Russ,
got
I'm going to
another
let you take
question.
that one.
If you were to choose, what might you pick for tools moving and picking up rounds non-mechanized that might most be the most advantageous? So I really like the wooden handled PV pickaroons. I like a wood handle. I'm old school. It just feels better than a steel handle or a fiberglass handle. There are plenty of tools out there. I have the Log Ox log hauler that they sent me. Those are really nice to just pick rounds up and carry them if you're going to carry them a distance.
Yep.
Most comfortable tool I've used, but to pick them up and release the log, it's not as easy as what it looks like, especially if the rounds are bigger. But I really like my pickaroons from PV Manufacturing. PV Manufacturing's right here by me in Maine. They are the original maker of the log PV back in 18 something. And maybe someday we'll take a field trip over there and go see the brothers that own that operation now. But it's the same forged tool patterns and everything that they've had for 200 plus years now. And we've had great luck with them. I really enjoy my wooden handle.
I agree with Russ 100% on pickaroons. I've got a steel pickaroon, and then I've got the short wooden handled Husqvarna.
How
They
you like your
call it,
Husqvarna one?
not the long one, not worth a hoot. It's the exact same head as my short handled Sappy, the little
Yep,
short one I keep when I'm firewood processing. But that long one, it's got a regular length handle, which is what, probably, I don't know, 30 inches. The
yep.
very first time I went to use it, the wooden handle broke, and I've been to two or three Husqvarna dealers, including the one I purchased it from. Husqvarna, and when Russ and I were at Expo Richmond, I learned that Husqvarna, if you buy one of their wooden handled tools and you break the handle, you are out of luck because Husqvarna does not have part numbers and support just the handle. If you break it 90 days after you've used it, which I bought mine about probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now, and have been trying for that long to find a new handle. The problem is the way they've got that head designed. I'm going to have to get a handle for something else and spend a lot of time really with a draw knife and shaving it down
Yep.
because I can't buy a handle from Husqvarna.
So if you
Why
buy
are
a
you going to sell
PV,
something you don't support?
anything from PV, you can change the handle length, you
Yep.
can change the handle shape, you can change anything you want. You just tell them what it is for a tool, and they'll show you what they have for handles to fit it. They're fantastic.
Well, that I was pretty ticked about that. Now the flip side of the coin, I've got some Husqvarna log tongs that are absolutely fantastic. I've had for 25 years. That if you're handling firewood rounds up to I don't know 9-10 inch, and they make a bigger set. I just don't have the bigger set. They're awesome. They're kind of like the log ox thing, but I've got one for each hand, and you can
Yep.
really work with chunks of split wood or rounds, and
Yeah.
they keep you from messing your back up.
Yeah, I really like the log ox for just picking rounds up and carrying them. If I'm moving them from one place to the other, they you don't have to bend at all. One little bend at the knees and that's it. But like I said, they make it look easier on film than it is to release the log or to toss the log, but it's not a controlled toss, so I
Well,
like my pickaroon better.
for, for me, getting used to the log ox was not a big deal. It was just basically my Husqvarna log tongs with a longer handle, so I didn't have to bend down as far.
Yep.
But it was basically the same movement to release the log. So you just take it and you kind of flick your wrist like that.
Yeah, I
You learn.
usually take my other hand in front of it and I just tap the hook because I like to set it right onto the splitter. I don't want to have to just
Sure.
toss it again to pick it up. So if I've got to set it on the splitter, I set it and then I can just tap the front and it comes right off, no
Yeah. Now,
problem.
if I'm setting them right down the splitter with even those, I just set them down and then move my hand like that, and
Yeah.
it just releases.
Yep.
But so Matthew says he'll take a 230 or a 440 A or B any day, cheap to keep. Yeah, those were really good little skidders, the 440s. The only thing I don't like about them is they're so light in the hind end. They cock up real bad, and I'm here in the mountains. So you can ask Russ, it's pretty steep here. Now there's still a few of them running around here, and a lot of guys had them. Worked great. The timber here on my farm was cut back in the 90s with a 440. I don't know if there's a B or a C, but it's one of the two. But the 230s sit a little lower.
Yep. Yeah, the 230s will side hill a little better. I
And
don't like side hilling on a skidder period if I can help it, but if you have to, a timberjack sits a little lower. So
the old I had the 540B John Deere's at one time, and those were really good fast skidders, and that's on my list for a potential candidate. But again, they are light, even those are light on the rear end, and you got to pay attention.
So we got a new subscriber. BT Saws just showed up, and I know who that is. That's Brandon Taylor. He helps us at the Hope Charity Firewood event that we do in September in Pennsylvania. So appreciate you stopping by, Brandon. Um, we do. That's one nice thing I like about the Woodhound community is we do some charity events around the country. They just had the Hoosier Firewood Hysteria and the Bear Paw Roundup last weekend. A couple of firewood events, and I know there's others all over. If you want to do something to help, guys, look in your local area. Almost every single state has multiple wood banks. If you just want to go and donate some time, whether it be stacking wood or lugging rounds or whatever, I actually know that there's 4 wood banks in our state now, and I'm going to try next Saturday to go and volunteer at one of those wood banks and bring some of our equipment down. Most of the people that do the wood banks in the state of Maine, I talked to the guy, he organizes the event. He's 84 years old. He runs the wood bank. He said his youngest regular participant is 73 years old. So these are grandparents that are out
Yep.
there keeping everybody else warm and going. And he said, "Well, how old are you?" I said, 41. He says, "Oh, good. Some young blood." He goes, "Rest up before you come, would you?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "No problem." I said, "I'll bring help too." He said, "Younger or older than you?" I said, "Maybe both." He said, "Doesn't matter. Bring them all." So he was excited.
Well, and going to those firewood benefits, I've been to during the 2 years I was on the road with equipment and whatnot, I haven't gone to a lot of those. For those of you wanting to get into the industry or buy a piece of equipment, those
Good
are
place to check it
excellent.
out.
Oh yeah, that's an excellent place for you to go and talk to those guys and see what they like, what they don't like.
And they'll
The
let you
neat
run it.
thing
If
is,
you're there and you want to try to
yeah,
run it, they'll let you run them. So if you want to try a splitter or whatever, just ask somebody and they'll give you a crash course and away you go.
there's really not a bad piece of equipment on the market that I'm aware of. It's just, and Russ and I've had this conversation many times. It just may not be the right piece of equipment for you.
Yeah,
But
I ask a lot of questions when somebody
yep,
comes to see me for a splitter or a
yep,
firewood processor because everybody's wood yard is different, everybody's process is different. You've got to ask those questions because the last thing in the world I want to do is get somebody to spend their money on something that they're not happy with. Like
yep,
Ryan said, any
100%.
dummy can sell you a piece of equipment. I'm no smarter than the next guy. I can tell you that right now. I've done firewood so many different ways, and I'm changing my thought process now, even 20 years into it. It's one of those deals where the more questions you can ask and the more information you can get, the better we can try to fit you into something that's going to be what you need. And like
Yeah.
Ryan said, these charity events, you can go and see the machines, you can run the machines, you can be around them, and it's just a good place to one, give back to the community, and two, get a chance to be around them.
But getting started into firewood, I think anybody that's in it would really recommend that you don't jump in with a processor initially.
No.
Start your firewood business with a splitter, unless you've got just money. I mean, that it's not a concern or an issue. And then if that's the situation you're in, I really kind of have to wonder why you're getting into firewood. But
Well, some people just really like it.
I'm due. Like Russ, I mean, there you are.
I
I
know.
mean,
I know. I
but generally speaking, the threshold where you need to strongly consider getting into a processor is probably somewhere around the 300 cord a year mark. If
Man,
you're
somebody
running
should have told me that years ago.
right, because you're doing what, 6 to 7
Yeah,
at least?
yeah. And this year will be more than that. If I can get the wood, I don't even know what we'll be at this year, but it's Gramp likes to cut by hand, and I've told everybody, and I'll tell him until I'm blue in the face. Until that man hangs his chainsaw up, I will let him cut whatever he wants
Ugh.
to cut for wood by hand. It's amazing to watch him go. He's like the Energizer Bunny. I swear, he just doesn't get tired.
But another thing is, like, with a sawmill or a processor, if you don't know how to handle your logs efficiently and lay your log yard out, you're not
Hmm.
going to gain much, if anything. In fact, you could go the other direction with it
Yep.
and actually lose some production, especially on the firewood side, over what you can do with a splitter. If you don't know how to handle those logs efficiently and lay that log yard out to where the logs are stored here, the machine is here, it's positioned thus and such, and you've got to get logs from point A to point B, you can really lose production.
I
So,
actually went and visited a gentleman. He's got a firewood processor and said he was having some trouble with the layout in his yard. It wasn't so much the layout, it was the wood that he was getting for his firewood processor. The size
yep,
varied so much between the logs. We actually started asking his logger, I had him start asking his logger to sort it by size when they deliver it so that
yep,
he could run a four-way wedge for all the smaller stuff and then drop a bigger wedge in for the bigger stuff. And he said by doing that, he thinks he just about doubled his throughput through the firewood processor. But as it was coming, everything was all mixed up, so he just
yeah.
couldn't get a good rhythm.
And what, so that's Russ just hit on another huge, major factor. Okay. Average log diameter. Okay. If you're, when you go from, and a lot of people don't realize this, but all you got to do is go look at a log scale or a basic math class. When you go from, say, a 10-inch diameter circle to a 20-inch diameter circle, or in this case, a log, you do not double the wood volume, you quadruple it.
4 times.
So if they're, for you guys that are sawmilling on the sawmill end of it, when you go from a 10-inch log to a 20-inch log, you've got 4 times the amount of lumber in that log. So you're going to handle, if you're cutting a bunch of 10-inch logs, you're going to handle 4 logs to every one of the big ones. So you're going to be making 4 opening cuts instead of 1 opening cut. You're going to have 4 decisions to make as to what face am I going to open up first. You're adding a lot more complexity into it, also a lot more low grade into it, which if you're not
Yep.
trying to saw out grade, that's not an issue. But there's so many variables. But like firewood, like when my wife and I, we've got a Typhoon RCA 480 firewood processor with an RN 5000 live deck. Sometimes she and I'll run a bunch of small stuff through, especially after this hurricane, cleaning up our farm. We've run just gobs of that small crap through it just to get rid of it. It takes forever to make a load to get a cord of wood out of that small stuff. When we go back, jump back into 12-inch, 12, 14-inch wood, and that machine will do 20. But when we jump back from like, say, an average wood diameter of 6 to 8 inches, and we jump up to 12, 14-inch, oh man, you can fly. You can fill our dump trailer holds 2 1/4 cords rounded off, and it'll fill it in 40 minutes. Whereas we're in that small wood, it takes about an hour and a half. So twice the time.
Yep. Yeah, and that's one of the things too, is the tips and tricks that you can pick when you're doing firewood. So if you're running a 4-way wedge and you've got those small logs, you can cut 4 and split them once. So you stack them
Yep.
like a diamond shape in your trough, and now you're eliminating all those other split cycles. So you speed the whole process up. I had a gentleman, he bought a firewood processor from me, and he called pretty concerned. He was actually pissed. He said, "Hey, I bought this machine." He said, "You told me a cord and a half an hour on average." He said, "I can't even get a cord through it." And I said, "Well, what are you cutting for wood?" And he sent me a picture. And I said, "Well, cut 4 times and split once." He goes, "What in the hell are you talking about?" He was mad. He had it already. And I sent him a video of one of my old Bell's processors that I had of doing just that. And
Yep.
when he saw it, he goes, "Huh." He said, "I'll call you back." He called me like 20 minutes later. He goes, "I'm sorry." He goes, "I shouldn't have got upset." He goes, "I haven't had a firewood processor before." He goes, "This just," he said, "it's a new experience." I said, "No," I said, "That's fine." But again, that's one of those deals where a lot of people haven't had this type of machinery before. So there's all kinds of
Yep.
things and tips and tricks that you can pick up along the way that'll really help if you're willing to listen to somebody that's done it long enough before you.
And this is another reason why we're telling you to sit there if you're starting a business out, even if you can financially write, let's say you've got the money to sit there and stroke the check for the processor of your dreams.
Oh boy.
Okay. If you don't have access to processor grade wood, you're not going to really gain anything at all over cutting with a chainsaw and a high quality splitter. In fact, you could very, very easily go the complete opposite direction with it and lose production. If you're cutting stuff, trying to cut logs that have got a lot of sweep and curve and crook to them, and they're just when you're running a firewood processor, you need to be thinking that you need basically sawmill quality logs.
As close
And
to it as you can get.
yep, basically, if you don't know what pallet logs or scrag logs are, learn because that's basically the quality that you really want if you want to maximize production out of a firewood processor.
I tell
So
everybody all the time, garbage in is garbage out. If you put a garbage log in, you cannot expect to be getting premium firewood out the other side. So if it's knots and
100%.
crotches and crooks and sweeps, and don't put Dr. Seuss's forest on the deck of the firewood processor and expect to have pretty firewood come out the other side.
When my wife and I are processing, in fact, she's sitting there checking in saying, hey, babe. So when she's running the machine, because she's got more actual runtime on it than I do, uh, I usually feed it and do all the grunt work. If while she's sitting there working, I'll make sure she's got a when I finish loading that deck, I'm already looking for the next batch of logs and eyeballing everything and seeing if there's anything that I missed with the chainsaw that needs to be addressed and trimmed back up. If I see something ugly in there, I see crotches and stuff like that. If it's a bad looking one, even though I know the machine's capable of splitting it, if it looks like something that's going to hang up and cost her some extra time in there, I'll go ahead and whack it out of the way with a chainsaw, throw it over in a pile, and I'll run it through my outdoor boiler myself just because I don't want the slight decrease in
Yep.
production time. It's not worth it.
Yep. Yeah, I had a
Uh,
guy come up and look at my all wood splitter this weekend, and I had some big oak, nasty tree service stuff. He wanted to know if it would split it. I said, it'll split it, but it's not going to make good firewood. And he goes, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, that's what almost everybody's running. I said, no. I said, but here, we put it up on the machine. And I mean, out of a 24-inch round, he might have made 4 good pieces of firewood. The rest was garbage. And he goes,
so
oh, I see what you mean now.
yeah, yeah. Um, Rob V's got a question. I'm going to jump. Rob, I'm going to circle back to you in just a second. Dallas down there with Bradshaw Firewood. Y'all will see Dallas on the podcast sooner rather than later. Dallas runs a large firewood business. He's running, I don't know what, 4 or 5,000 cords a year of firewood through a multi-tech. He's got a commercial logging business just to support it. And he said that's why he went to full mechanical logging because he wasn't even getting processor grade wood.
Yep.
So he's done this to get a more consistent product because I think he was also trying to buy some wood in and just wasn't getting the quality. And that's something a lot of people are doing with the firewood business is they got access to tree service wood and then they want a processor. If you're getting tree service wood, a processor is the last thing in the world you need. You will only if you're on the East Coast, if you're out west or in the Rockies, that's a little bit different ball game because that's a lot of softwood. But here on the East Coast, if you're running tree service wood and you go buy a processor, anyone on the market, you're probably only going to be able to run what, Russ? And I used to do tree service work, so I know what they're kicking out. You're only
You're only
producing
going to run maybe a
10,
third of what you're bringing back if you're lucky.
I was going to say 10, 15% on average
Yep.
because it's either going to be too short, it's not going to fit on the deck, it's going to fall through the rails on the deck, or it's going to be too big, or it's going to be too crotchy. It's just bad. So if you're getting tree service wood and you're thinking processor, you're barking up the entirely wrong tree. You need
Maybe.
to get
I'm going to
good.
take everybody on a field trip.
Oh, I know what you're doing. That's a whole nother ball game, though.
You
Most
got to
people aren't
write a
going to lay
bigger
out.
check, though.
Yes, most people don't have 400 plus to write out, though.
Yep.
But Rob was asking chaps or saw pants in the winter.
Saw
For
pants.
me, saw pants. I hate chaps. I carry a pair of West Coast style stubbies in the toolbox on my pickup truck just in case I'm out and about and need to make a cut when I wasn't really planning on logging or anything for the day. But I hate chaps. They provide you really good quality protection if you get good ones, equal to what you're going to get with a saw pant probably. But for me, the comfort is not there. They're hot, which obviously in the wintertime is not necessarily a bad thing. But the thing I don't like is I deal with a lot of brush and the loops. Now you can get zip chaps around the calf. We have a couple pair of those. That's what my son usually wears if he's helping me. He normally wears the chaps that have got the full wrap calf protection with a zipper, and that's a drastic improvement. But I hate taking the things on and off. If I'm going to go out and run a saw all day or even a half a day, dude, I'm in chaps. Pants, and I discovered cloggers about 2 years ago. They're made in New Zealand. Uh, Most comfortable chainsaw pant I've ever worn in my life.
Yep.
I've got a pair of the Zeros. They're also the coolest pant I've ever worn. They are pretty much as cool, honestly, truthfully, maybe a little bit cooler than the double knee Carhartt jeans I typically wear. Uh, They've got winter weights. I haven't tried the Clogger winter weights yet. I've been wearing a pair. I know y'all get a kick out of this. I run steel chainsaws and I wear Husqvarna logger pants during the winter time. Those bright orange pants, not for a fashion statement because they're warm in the winter. Now, Still, I was talking to one of the guys with Still at Expo Richmond. Still's come out with some new chainsaw pants, and I may give those a try here before too long. But pants, 100% more comfortable in my opinion.
I wear chaps only because I don't saw very often anymore. Gramp usually has the saw, but if I was going to be sawing on a regular basis again, definitely pants for sure. But you got to have something on. It only takes a split second or one slip, and you're going to really wish you had something. For all the younger guys that are watching or that watch this and come across this podcast at another point in time, don't be a hero. And if there's one piece of advice I can give every single one of you is don't hurry. Take your time. That's when
Yep.
you're going to have your accidents, is when you hurry or when you
And
get
tired.
complacent. Think I've done this a million times, no big deal. Well, that million and one time is all it took. So
And that's for me, that's another reason for the pants is because of the fact that, let's say I take them off at lunchtime or something like that, which if you can ask Russ working with me, if you go to the woods with me, you better eat a big
better bring
breakfast.
snacks because he doesn't stop for lunch.
Do I stop at all?
Once in a while, when you got to hit some of that rockwood.
Yeah. When I get out in the woods in the morning, I usually just go all day long and don't stop till I get home. But if if I stop for some reason, or if I have to make an unexpected trip to town for a part, if I'm wearing chaps, I'm going to take them off when I go get in the truck. I'm not going to walk around town with them, uh, just because they're just not comfortable with the chainsaw pants. If I come back after getting that part, I may get lazy and not put my chaps back on. With the chainsaw pants, it's not an issue. They're on.
Yep.
They're there. I'm not going to forget to put them back on. I'm not going to get lazy or complacent and go, I'm just going to go make one cut. I don't need them. No, I've got them on. I also wear hikes, uh, chainsaw boots. I wore Steel Pro Marks for years, but I don't know about the new ones, but the old ones weren't waterproof. Uh, I've switched over to hikes. They're a German made boot, really comfortable. I can't remember the exact one I'm wearing. They've got like several different models, but they're really, really comfortable. They're modeled after a European hiking boot, but they're actually a class two chainsaw boot. So I've got protection in my, boot too, because if you slip and get the top of your foot, that's not really pretty.
Gramps done that once. That was enough.
Oh yeah.
That last piece, you go to cut that last 3 inch off the last piece of the day, and saw goes through a little quicker than you thought and catches you in your instep. It set him down for about 5 weeks before he was feeling like he wanted to get back on his foot. So
Well, I've had guys sit there and go, "Oh, well, that's why I wear steel toe boots." Well, let me tell you what.
steel toe boot
I
ain't gonna
have
do that.
no, I've got I had a buddy 20 years ago. There's an experienced logger, and he's game was logging certified and all of that. He was wearing his chaps, wearing his steel toe boots, just like he was supposed to. Somehow or another, he was on the landing, bumping knots, slipped, and I think he's either running a 372 or a 385. I think it was a 385, but he had a freshly sharpened square ground chisel chain on there, and it went right through that steel toe and took took his big toe most of the way off. They had to finish taking it off at the hospital, and then debriding all the metal fragments from the steel toe was an extra level of fun for him.
Yep.
So
Yeah, no, it's
my hikes are steel toe as well, or they may be composite. I think they're actually
composite.
steel. Are they composite?
I think so, yep.
Either way, they're a safety toe, but they've got the saw protection in them.
Yep. And that's the other thing too, is that even though you have the saw protection in them, they're not going to completely stop. Most big modern power saws, there's been
Yeah.
lots of demonstrations done. So, the hope is that it lessens whatever the injury is, and it will for sure because it's going to stop the saw. But safety has got to be on your mind at all point in time. That chainsaw is a weapon, and that chainsaw wants to kill you. You need to treat it as such, and you need to keep it away from yourself and handle it safely. If you're not comfortable with whatever you're using for a saw because it's too big, you're not used to it, whatever it may be, slow down, take your time, become accustomed to that saw before you just take off and run with it.
and run as short of a bar as you can get away with for what you're working. You
Yep.
know, the West Coast, I've fallen timber from here in Virginia all the way out to northern Idaho and whatnot. And northern Idaho is like cutting on the West Coast. You know, out there, the average guy's running a 28-inch bar. You know, back here, most guys are cutting with 20s, maybe 24s. You know, if and Russ will tell you, I still cut actually quite a bit of timber with a 16-inch bar on a 400. Um, and I cut some pretty good sized stuff with that. You know, I run either a 400 with a 20, I mean, with a 16-inch most of the time. I'll put a 20 on it if I need to, but or I run my 400, my 462 with a 20 or 24. The longer bar is a bigger lever for more kickback. And also, when you're learning, it's more bar for you to try to keep up with in the cut. And you have to, when you're felling timber, you have to know where your bar tip is at all times, especially in the back cut, if you want to maintain control of that tree. And when you're bucking, even bucking firewood, it's important to know where that bar tip is at.
Yep.
The longer the bar, the more vicious the kickback. I used to have a bad habit of putting my thumb up on the pistol grip of the saw. Well, 2 years ago, I was running my 661 with a 28-inch bar and some 4-foot oak. And I had my chain, I'd thrown another chain on it, and that was a chain. It was a full skip chain, one of my chains that I had left from my Western timber falling days. And I had filed the rakers on that chain for softwood out west. I thought I'd gone through all that chain. Well, I discovered in there, I said, well, I'm going to just run this chain out instead of spinning a new loop. I'll just use it up. Didn't think anything about it. Well, I hit the angle just a little bit wrong going in. I had my thumb up on the pistol grip like that. The saw kicked back really bad in the cut. Dislocated my thumb here, here, and in here, and tweaked, didn't dislocate, but misaligned these two bones up here. Well, that took multiple trips to a osteopath to get that back in place, plus me being in a thumb brace for about 6 months. Not a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
kickback,
Yeah.
even if you don't get hit with the bar and chain, kickback can do you some pretty nasty damage.
Yeah, my dad had a close call with kickback. He doesn't run chainsaw very much, but my uncle was working for a big gravel company up here, and they were stripping off the back of the gravel pit bank to take some more material out. And they told him they could have all the firewood if they wanted to go up on the weekend and cut it. So they said sure. And Dad was cutting, and he went in for a cut somewhere, and it kicked back. And when it did, the inertia brake caught, and he bounced the chain
Mm.
off his forehead, and all you could see was the indent of the tooth where it hit his skin. It never broke the skin. He shut the saw
Ooh.
off. He went and set it on the back of the truck, and he started loading firewood. My uncle come out. He goes, "What are you doing? You got a whole load cut?" Dad goes, "I got all I'm going to cut today, all cut." He goes, "We're done." He goes, "I'm going to load this up." He said, "I'm going home." He said, "Why?" And he showed him his forehead. My uncle looked at it. He goes, "What is that?" Dad goes, "That's the chainsaw chain." He goes, "It just kissed my forehead." He said, "I'm done." And I ended up picking the saw up, and I cut the rest of the load. And Dad said, "I'm glad you picked it up." He said, "I'm not running it no more today." He said, "That's enough for one day." It happens
Yep.
fast.
Oh, yeah. And again, the longer the bar, the more vicious the kickback because it's just a bigger lever.
Yep. I hear all these guys, get a long bar, stand up and buck. Well, where we are cutting out of log piles where it's full tree length, a long bar like that is dangerous because you can't really judge where everything's going to move and how it's going to move when it shifts. So you've got a whole lot more saw to pull out of the way. If that log pile goes, it's an accident waiting to happen.
It's
Um,
more teeth to sharpen.
yeah,
It's more weight to carry. Um, Out west, we run long bars because now you would think here in the mountains that I would do that here as well. Um, but it's a completely different style of cutting. There's different as night and day. You can't really compare the two. Out there, that's the correct approach is, that longer bar. But back here, it just unless you're in big timber, when I get to really, stuff that's consistently around 4 foot and whatnot, which I cut a fair amount of that from time to time, I will throw a 28-inch bar on the saw just to make life a little easier. I've got
Yep.
bars from 16 to 36 inch. I used to have 42-inch bars for fallen old growth out west. Um, but I like as long of a bar as short of a bar as I can reasonably comfortably get away with. Um, I cut most of my trees from both sides. It's just even with a 28-inch bar, I'm going to be cutting a lot of my timber from both sides. So why carry that extra, you know, 4 to 8 inches of bar when I'm going to do the same thing, have to do the same thing anyway?
Yep.
Um, the I also run light bars since they've come out with the lightweight bars. That's what I have transitioned to, and really, really like those because when that power head is balanced closer back to you, it's a lot less wear and tear on you. It's a lot less fatigue. It's easier on your back. It's easier on your shoulders. And your shoulder's the only joint in your body that gravity's constantly trying to pull it out of socket. So you go adding a chainsaw to that. You take like the steel bars. A 25-inch steel Rollomatic ES bar is 16 ounces heavier than the 25-inch Rollomatic light bar. Well, that's 16 ounces. That's a pound. That's a lot
Yep.
at the end of the day. And that's a lot less fatigue. The When you start to get tired is when you really start to up your chances of getting hurt.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than Gramp. I mean, we've got 372s still in the bigger saws. 90% of the time, if I poke my head out the door first thing in the morning and I listen, he has the little 50cc decked imported Echo because
Mhm,
it's so light. He can run it longer without getting tired and without it bothering his shoulders. He's 80 years old. His shoulders are already shot. And if he can
mhm.
do it for a little bit longer and it saves him some, then that's great. And I can tell by poking my head out the door what saw he's running. And most of the time I go out there, he's got that little Echo first. And it's one of those things where you don't have to have the biggest saw out there. You don't have to have the loudest saw out there. I'll tell you right now, somebody that can really hand sharpen will outcut you with a smaller saw any day of the week.
Yep.
It's how you sharpen your chain. And hand sharpening, if somebody really knows what they're doing, it's very seldom that you will find anybody with a grinder that will keep up with somebody that can truly hand sharpen. So if you want to enjoy running a chainsaw, practice your hand sharpening. Practice, practice, practice. It's an art. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of trial and error to find out what works. Ryan sharpens a saw different than anybody I've ever seen, but it works for him. He sharpens his saw like he's playing a cello right on his shoulder. I don't know. I can't figure it out.
It's not on my shoulder. I'm holding the power head in my lap. It's up here like now the bar is up here and I'm holding it like that. And so I guess yeah, I can see his argument.
Yeah. He was mad because they wouldn't let him play in the orchestra as a kid, so he's just trying to get back at him with his chainsaw. So
Oh, look, they would pay me not to play.
probably.
Not no, not there's no probably to it for sure. They'd pay me not to play. Yeah.
Well, we ran into overtime as usual because we're good at talking. But this was episode number 5, so we made it 5 trips. It's been a little better as far as people in here each time we've done it. So we appreciate those of you that show up each week. We
Yes,
appreciate those of you
absolutely.
new that showed up. And what do we tell everybody, Ryan?
A little bit every day goes a long way.
And help someone if you can. We'll see you guys next Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern. And if Ryan doesn't have a guest next week, I do. So we'll have somebody different on here next week. You won't have to just look at our 2 mugs, but we will see you guys next Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Share this with your friends, pass it along, and let's help this grow. Have a good night, guys.
Appreciate y'all.